Okay, we're starting the live episode. So it's very sporadic whether the episodes will be live or not. And just follow me on Twitter, Bruno's MMA Show 1, the digit. So BRUNOSMMASHOW digit 1. If you want a link for when I go live, at the moment it's impossible for me to have a set schedule. So sometimes I'll go live, sometimes I'm just gonna record and upload it. So it's gonna be for now. Uh, okay. So just a few side comments I want to make real quick. I'm gonna cover the Olympics soon, but I'd be lying if I said that I've been watching the Olympics so far. I just didn't find the time. So I kind of wanted to do it as it happened. I'm gonna try to do that going forward, but like there's no point to me just reading results and not having my own opinion on it. I don't think like just parroting what happened is not my interest. So I'll be sure to try to catch up with it, or at least keep up with combat sports in the Olympics going forward. And yeah, so that's for one thing. Also, I did not see yet the bare knuckle fight between Paige Van Zandt and Rachel Ostovich. So I can't really comment on it, even though I've seen clips, even though I heard what happened, that she walked off after the decision was made. Paige Van Zandt walked off after Ostovich won. Because I didn't see it, once more, I'm gonna just I'm not gonna start parroting what I heard or saw online. Um, but I'll say this much: I think, and I could be wrong, but this is just kind of funny. So Van Zandt has lost two in a row, and she was kind of supposed to be like the face of bare knuckle fighting, I guess. Which is ironic when you think about it, because faces in bare knuckle fighting get really messed up. So that way of putting it is kind of funny. And yeah, from what I heard and from the clips I've seen, and I reserve my final opinion for when I actually see. Um, it sounds like Ostovich was a lot more game when it came to the whole bare knuckle fighting aspect of it. And it's kind of funny because I could be wrong, but I believe that they just signed Ostovich for that one fight. I think their logic was, oh, Van Zandt beat her before, therefore she can beat her again. Although it's a completely different rule set, a completely different context, 2 years later or something, so fighters change. And I think they just wanted this as sure of a win that you can get in combat sports without um, without paying off fighters or something sketchy like that. And it's kind of funny because from my understanding, they didn't sign up Ostovich for many fights because Ostovich said something along the lines of her agent will talk with them. So it's kind of interested how now they signed up Van Zandt, but maybe Van Zandt wasn't the person to go to after all. Who knows? We'll see. Or maybe she is. We don't know what will happen yet. So that's a quick sign note. I thought it was kind of funny because and nothing against those fighters, but there's fighters that are signed up just because they look like they could be in movies or something, or in an action movie or whatever. And um, Sage Northcutt, and nothing against them. I'm not saying they don't have skill, but like the reason why they're preferred above other fighters is just they have that Hollywood look to them or something, whatever you want to call it. And then like that's not really a viable way to go forward. Or maybe look, maybe they make good business with it. So, and I'm talking about the fight, so actually I might be wrong there. Um, but I think like the cases like Lobov and Jason Knight, those things will make your sport grow a lot more long term, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, I think bare knuckle fighting requires a certain kind of fighter who there's fighters and then there's bare knuckle fighters as far as being game goes. You know what I mean? I think there's athletes in MMA who, if you told them like, "Hey, there's bare knuckle MMA fights now, and we're bringing back headbutts. I don't know, and you can knee and kick the head on the grounded opponent." Not everyone would wanna do that, even though technically bare knuckle is safer for the brain and all that. But it's just Hmm. Anyway, didn't intend to talk about it this long. We're gonna be talking about UFC Vegas 32. Uh, the Night of the Brain Dead Judges. How's that sound for a B movie? B horror movie. The Night of the Brain Dead Judges. The fighters went in, gave it their all. But there's nothing they could do against the zombie judges. Yeah. Well, let's go over the results, the main card only. Okay, I got a list here, but my they're out of order. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure they're out of order. They're not in the right order, but well, it doesn't matter. Okay, so or maybe they are. I already forgot the order of the fights, but I remember the fight, so let's go through it. So Macy Barber defeats Miranda Maverick. I mean, okay, here's my opinion. Um, First of all, my opinion is that Miranda Maverick won. I think the judges got it wrong. And I do understand, and I'm gonna say something about this because this is something I never heard anyone, but like I never heard anyone else bring it up. So I'm gonna bring it up. Um, Macy Barber was winning round three, sure, okay, but Miranda Maverick won one and two. So what do we make of that? Because a lot of people, their idea of when it comes to what matters, and they look when it comes to what matters, like whoever was winning the last round is more significant. It's kind of like that argument we always hear, which I understand because it's kind of like MMA is rooted in this. It's not really where boxing is comfortable understanding it's a sport. MMA is a sport that wants to also be um, a fight to the death in theory, because of the origins of the sport as well. Who would win with as few rules as possible? But now MMA has plenty of rules. So we're in this weird area where I think MMA has kind of like an identity crisis. So to this day, fighters like Nate Diaz, so much weight is put upon on the last round. Who would have won if it was a street fight and all those things? Which look, I'm not gonna throw my opinion there right now because I don't want to muddle things, whether that's a good thing or not. However, if you want to go that route, if you don't want to say what matters is as per the scoring of UFC, because places like one championship have different rules that they score over the whole fight. But nevertheless, if you want to look at okay, who wins the most rounds wins the fight, even if so. In theory, a winner could be losing the last round and still win the fight if they have more rounds where they won. And then the purest of the street fight combat of realness, the purists of that will come with the opinion that the last round is the only one that matters because that's where you know who would have won a street fight. So that's why people like Nate Diaz are very popular. And in some cases, I think that applies. For example, if I were to get into that, to go on that side of the argument, I would say with Nate Diaz, there's no moment where, for example, with Leon Edwards, I might be remembering wrong, but I don't feel like there was a moment where he was saved by the bell as much as he just endured the whole fight up until he almost got Leon Edwards, but by then lost by decision because of the fact that he got outscored in points and all that. Um, where you could argue like there's no moment where it looked like Nate Diaz was about to be knocked out, but Leon Edwards sure was. So okay, that's the argument. But there's no one where he might have been maybe saved by the bell. You just felt like Nate Diaz wasn't going to be submitted and he wasn't being knocked out, so he would just endure until he got Leon Edwards, I guess, because Leon Edwards was more tired or something. I don't know. And maybe there's moments where Nate Diaz was almost knocked out and he was just really good at hiding it. I don't know. But for a fighter like that, I can understand. However, in a fight like Macy Barber and Miranda Maverick, where you get the feeling that Barber might have been saved by the bell in those first two rounds. Uh, so here's where the argument of the last round matters most for realness is flawed in the sense that in realness, there would have been no round to stop it. It wouldn't have gone that far. So, for example, there's a lot of fighters who don't have a long-term gas tank who are really strong in early rounds, and then you have another fighter who just survives around those rounds and is maybe saved by the bell, um, and then goes to win thanks to how the sport is set up, where if you just survive a few minutes, you get that beginning of the round again, and if you have better cardio overall, you might win. Where in a real fight, you would have been finished earlier anyway, so you never would have seen that later. Like so. For example, just to give a general example, if a fighter is under a ground and pound and is saved by the bell, and then the other fighter who would have in a fight, or if they're early in the fight, the round, the fighter hitting from the top, he would have won there. You know, he gives it his all, spends his energy, and then like it doesn't matter if he has nothing left after because the other guy is just finished. But in this scenario where the guy on the bottom is getting hit and then he's saved by the bell, and then maybe the guy on top like just had less good cardio, and the guy with better cardio is now like, let's go again, and also maybe the guy on top ironically got tired hitting, where in a real life scenario like he could have hit until it was done, no one was gonna stop him. Therefore, whatever energy he put into that served to finishing the fight. Whereas in that artificial environment of rounds, then you get that reset button, and then sometimes look, this might have applied to fighters I love, like Tony Ferguson. Like I feel like when you look at this fight with Kevin Lee, and now I'm going by memory, I might get it wrong. Okay, just forgive me if I get it wrong, but um, I think at some point he was saved by the bell and then went on to win. Like so for a sport of MMA, having that long-lasting cardio, in the case of some fighters like Nate Diaz, it just where it's hard to put them out by submission or knockout. Yeah, that cardio makes it so in a real life where no one gets involved, there's no elements like weapons or improvised weapons or whatever. Like it's just like two people in the field. Yeah, and then the realness is Nate Diaz might win that, and then the last round can be an argument. But in other cases where you can clearly tell, you know what, if there had been no end of the round there, that fight would have been finished. Then the last round becomes irrelevant to your realness argument. All that to say, I find that Miranda Maverick should have won that fight by the rules of scoring. And even if you want to go into the argument of a street fight or whatever you want to call it, that last round would not have happened. So it's kind of like, well, for both cases, you would have to give it to Miranda. But I understand how that last round was so bad, but it's not scored over. First of all, well, let's forget a realness argument that we took care of that. But that's not how the fight is scored. I don't know under one championship rules. I would have to look at it again, which I won't. But under UFC rules, Miranda Maverick should have won. Okay, Adrian Yanez defeats Randy Costa. That was oh, no, it was. It didn't go the distance, so like I can't say it was. Yeah, it wasn't short, but it's one of those fights that you kind of wish you had gone the distance in a way. I know that wins are satisfying, but at the same time, it was a really cool fight. Like those guys were going in, and that was so cool. And I just love that. And I've nothing to say. Like I don't really have any observations about that fight other than those guys just went at it, and it was really cool. And you know what? They were super respectful to each other, going in. Well, all the friendly banter online on Twitter and social media, and then at the end, the respect they were showing, and it was so refreshing because those guys, when like they messed up each other hard, like they were hitting and like they were bloody, and it's Giannis was particularly bleeding particularly. Um, and kudos to him for winning because at first he was getting like worked up by that job from Costa. But I think the era of, I mean, I say that, but then you have like McGregor fans and such, but the era of like that bustering, yeah, I'm not a fan. Like sometimes you can tell it's legit, you know, like sometimes you can see two fighters really dislike each other, like Adesanya and Paulo Costa, not to be confused with Randy Costa here. And then okay, yeah, you're gonna have like that unpleasantness, which is real. But so often you have this manufactured toughness, you know, like it's like not a lot of fighters behave like athletes in MMA. A lot of fighters behave like they're in a gang war or something. It's like you're an athlete. You're a sport athlete. Okay, I don't care about your background. Like you're a sport athlete. You're not a gangster. Oh, I mean, okay, I guess maybe some of them also are gangsters, directly or indirectly. But I mean, overall, what an MMA fighter is, an MMA fighter is a sport athlete. You know. So I think the way they handled it was much better. It was fun. It was a fun fight. They didn't need to hate each other to mess each other up, and it didn't feel dirty. You know, they didn't do anything that was shameful or even a dangerous example to set for fans who might admire going too far. I'm not gonna say the name, but you know who I'm thinking of. You know. Um, you know, it's like they kept it to fun stuff like Reese's and Dr. Pepper, an argument over snacks. You know, like they never say anything about the other guy's family or stuff like that. You know, like they were social media savvy, they were fun, and they did a fun fight. And you know what? Like, I think there's a lot to learn from that. I think a lot of MMA fighters are missing the point. Respectfully, if I may, they think they go on social media to act tough, and that's gonna sell fights. But it's Giannis and Costa got so much attention from that fun thing they did online about arguing about snacks, and they did a cool fight, and people talked about him before and after. Teddy Atlas talked about them. They won. They showed how it's done. And then, okay, Ben Askren, for example, he'll talk trash for sure. But when you look at what Ben Askren is doing in his upcoming fight with Jake Paul, like he was like doing the Rocky Five montage parody and stuff like that. So I think fighters in modern day need to understand. Yes, need to understand. I'll say it that. These days, if you want people to notice you, be social media fun, be social media savvy. You don't need to do immoral shit. You don't need to go to places that are dark and ugly and gross and borderline criminal, if not outright criminal. Uh, technically, some stuff that fighters will say and do to each other are criminal acts. They are, you know, they just are. Um, yeah, that's my opinion. Like, you don't, you will prove how tough you are in the cage. You don't need to prove it on Twitter. And don't be a sore loser. Do not be a sore loser. And don't be a sore winner either. And I just, those two guys, I'm just gonna follow their careers now because I just like what they brought to the table. I like how they built up the fight, and I like that they kept it fun. This is not a street fight. This is not a gang war. This is a sport. We're watching for fun. We're not watching to get angry, are we? I don't know. Maybe some of you are. I love to watch for the technique. I love those moments when we like, oh my god, I can't believe that happened. And yes, there's a twisted aspect to the sport. Whoever practices, watches, talks about like, well, there's something with us that enjoys that violence. I understand, but we're still living in a civilized society, aren't we? Okay. Okay, Darren Elkins defeats Derek Minner. Minner, yeah. Minner. Two N's, Minner. I don't remember how you say his name. Sorry. Um, yeah, there's a like Elkins got messed up in the first round, came back, won the fight, and apparently I didn't even know that. Apparently Elkins is the kind of fighter who always gets messed up at first and comes back. some fun memes. I encourage everyone to just like search hashtag Darren Elkins and find some really fun memes online. If I had time to waste, I'd make a few maybe with the Terminator or Wolverine or something. I don't know. Like it's kind of he was so messed up in round one. It's like you look at that guy and he ends up on bottom. He's bloody. You're like, well, that guy's gonna lose for sure. And then he comes back and wins, and you're like, how did he turn that around? It's amazing. But see, talking of rounds, and like again, I think one essential attribute that fighters need in combat sports with rounds, which is basically almost all of them, if not all of them, is that it doesn't. If it didn't go your way, it doesn't matter what happened. You have to start the next round. No matter if your body's not fresh, like your mind has to be fresh. You have to go into the round like doesn't matter what happened before, you can still win this. And like Darren Elkins, my God, just if you anyone who Googles the UFC Vegas 32, type in like that and Darren Elkins and Derek Minner. And just like I don't know, there's a picture of like Elkins getting like hit and on the blood that sprays out. It's like a horror movie. Okay. Um. Yeah. Okay. Raulian Paiva defeats Skylar Phillips. I don't agree with that one. Um. I don't. Again, I don't understand what the judges were doing. In my opinion, Skylar Phillips did more. He did more. Like he did more in that fight. I don't understand. I do not understand what the judges saw there. And now let's go to the last one, which is one that's actually controversial. People are actually arguing the main event. TJ Dillashaw defeats Corey Sanhagen, which I disagree. So that's like three matches out of five that I think the judges got wrong. So I don't know what to make of it. Um, yeah, I think Corey Sanhagen won. Arguments for TJ, where that TJ used wrestling a lot, and TJ had cage control. So last night I went on what do you call those Twitter rooms where you can like talk with people and listen to their conversation. And what's her name? No way. Let's see. Just a moment. I'm just gonna look for the name. Okay, yeah, it's just Gina MMA. So JUSTGINA MMA. I was in her Twitter, yeah, just a bunch of people talking about MMA, and I went there for a few minutes, and some people mentioned like arguments for the scoring of TJ Dillashaw winning, which I'm not calling it a robbery. I'm just saying I disagree with the results from the judges, but their arguments, and I want to address them, are that Dillashaw had more cage control and more wrestling. That said, my counter argument to those is that I feel like wrestling has to either mean like a long time controlling, not just holding someone. And I'll give some value to holding someone down, but just holding them against the cage, not so much. Which is my own personal bias, so make of it what you will. But Um, and also, I feel like that wrestling, if you don't lead to a submission or to damage, at least if there's very little damage to go on, if there's little, then I feel like it's more relevant. But you know what? I'm really not an expert on MMA scoring, to be honest. Like I really go with, in my opinion, I know what the parameters are, but it's not like I ever tried to score a fight or ever looked at it in those terms. So make of it what you will. But in my opinion, like just holding someone against the fence, not the same as holding them down on the ground. And if you take down someone but they get up right away, that's like I don't see the value in it. I don't consider it a proper takedown. Like to me, takedowns you take someone down, and you keep them there, and then like if you don't do anything with that takedown for a few minutes, but you're the one who's most messed up. The other one messed you up. Then again, like there's wins from wrestlers that I find are very legitimate. Like Gilbert Burns beats Wonder Boy Stephen Thompson, but he like that was proper control. I feel it wasn't like it was. Thompson didn't get much done, but Sandhagen did a lot on TJ Dillashaw. And then if you talk about cage control, that's supposed to be, if I remember correctly, and someone might tell me I'm wrong, cage control is supposed to be when all else fails. Like if you don't have, because they had to acknowledge people who fight going backwards, and that was their style, like John Jones, for example. Um, but that, if I remember correctly, that's when you don't have other parameters. Like if the other parameters fail, then you discuss cage control. But there were other parameters, and I feel like Sandhagen was doing more. TJ Dillashaw was walking into stuff. So the fact that TJ Dillashaw was advancing is pointless if he's advancing into stuff, in my opinion. Um, so yeah, now I'm good. That's my opinion. I think Sanhagen won, but you know what? I think we need to normalize draws in MMA. I think judges, I don't know what it is, where they feel like they always have to choose a winner, and most of the time they should, but at the same time, I think we need to normalize draws in MMA because if anything, I would have been fine with that being a draw. If you want to make it like there's different parameters of MMA at hand here, like the wrestling versus the damage done with the strikes, and so you can kind of like debate it, and then if there's too many things, you can always go with the draw. I feel like it would be better than this. If judges don't know what they're doing, I'd rather see draws. I mean, it's frustrating, but it wouldn't be as frustrating as the wrong person getting a win. Okay, moving on to questions on Twitter. I got Red D Martel Arts. So not Marshall, Martel. So Red D, the letter, Martel Arts, who asks, how do you see the sport of MMA evolving over the next 10 years? So by the way, for people can, I always put, when I go live, I always put the link on Twitter and people can leave comments underneath. Okay, how do you see the sport of MMA evolving over the next 10 years? I'm gonna give a cop-out answer, but with an elaborate explanation of my cop-out answer. I don't know where it's gonna go because there's two ways it could go, or maybe it goes both ways. Because for a while we thought the era of the specialist was over, and then you have the era of the generalist, the people who do everything. They do everything from the start. But then you saw, and oh wow, what's his name in Bellator? Aaron Pico. You saw a prospect like Aaron Pico was good at wrestling, good at boxing, and but then putting it together for MMA, it's horrible. Then you could argue they pushed him too fast. And then it's funny that it happened in Bellator because in Bellator they always, when they want a fighter to win, they always give him cans for a long time. Yeah. But with Aaron Pico, they gave him some very legit fighters early on, and now Aaron Pico's doing better, but now his record shows a few losses there that might not that it might not go with his potential as a fighter, let's say, or where he'll end up. Not to mention, even if someone's really talented, you get him knocked out a few times, you're already like damaging his chin longevity. So if you got a prospect who could be really, really good, you might want to think about that as a promoter. Or not. Maybe you just don't worry about that. But for Bellator, who doesn't throw people to the wolves normally when they want to work their way up, well, they want to work them the way up. It was kind of an odd choice from Bellator. Okay, what do I talk about him? Well, Aaron Pico is kind of like the modern MMA fighter in the sense that he was trained striking and grappling together from the start, or something like that. But then you look at someone like Khabib, who was a specialist, and then he learned to strike over time better and better. But when it got to his realm, he was so good at it that no one could stop it. And then you look at people like Israel Adesanya, who again is a specialist striker in his case, and in his weight class, because we saw what happened with Blachowicz, uh, no one can in striking. Well, I mean, Kevin Gastelum certainly made a good show of himself. So I'm not going to say no one, but what I mean is that you see when someone's a specialist and then learns other things, it's almost like they have a level of understanding where other fighters might not. So again, styles make fights. So because of that, I see those two things. But then when there's a gap, that gap can be exploited. So for the future of MMA, I don't see. I don't know how it's going to be approached because as a sport, you have people like Trevor Whitman who kind of pointed out MMA is the only professional sport out there who's using equipment from other sports when training. So Trevor Whitman is creating gear for MMA training because you MMA fighters train with boxing gear, Muay Thai gear, grappling gear. Like they don't train with MMA gear. You know, like the headgear is not MMA gear. The gloves aren't so for MMA training. You know, like the the shin guards and all that stuff. So it's interesting how Trevor Whitman, just by talking about the equipment, also kind of brought up in a way, at least in my mind, how we're still figuring out how MMA should be trained. And there's a lot of people who just think MMA should be MMA. Like you have people like online. What's his name? Oh well. Um, I forgot his name. But there's a coach who's famous. He trains and he has a he teaches in a gym in Shanghai, and I'm forgetting his name. But he thinks that MMA should be trained MMA. If you spar, you spar MMA and such. You know, like. And then there's people like Faraz Sahabi in Montreal, TriStar, the trainer of GSP, who thinks that MMA fighters should be careful not to spar too much boxing because then it kind of messes the notion of the proper distance for MMA. So if you do too much boxing sparring, you might get that like distance wrong when it comes to kickboxing, takedowns, and all that stuff. So this is a very elaborate way of saying I actually don't know because when you see specialists, they certainly bring something that other people just like can't touch that aspect, but also maybe they don't have that general um, knowledge in detail. Like you know, like is a version of Israel Adesanya who has even better grappling because they started MMA early on. Would he have dealt better with Blachowicz, or he would never would he never would have gotten there because the striking would be what it is now? I don't know, but overall, I think I don't see anyone defeating Israel Adesanya anytime soon in his weight class. And like his way of feinting of striking, like it's uncanny. And then when you look at what Khabib did to people, it's amazing. So um, I don't know. I feel like a specialist who has the potential to learn enough of the other stuff seems to be the unstoppable answer. But it's actually we're so early in the sport. It doesn't feel that way, right? But we're so early in the sport's history. And what I'm noticing is that now there's elements of martial arts that have been discarded completely in the past that are being, for the past few years, we're seeing a lot of taekwondo stuff, a lot of karate stuff, a lot. I don't know if we'll see kung fu. I know that it was said that what Tony Ferguson did was like Wing Chun, grabbing and elbowing, but they also do that in Muay Thai. So I don't know if it was really Wing Chun or what was the move that Joe Rogan was really excited about? Because the thing is, Ferguson I think grabbed and pulled down and kind of like went and went the elbow or something. I don't remember right now. I'm drawing a blank completely, but that could also have been Muay Thai, not necessarily Wing Chun. I'm sorry. Um, it was the hand trap. Did he hit with the elbow? Because if let's say it was like a hand trap and then like a punch like this or something, then I could call it Wing Chun. But if it was like a hand trap that led to an elbow, you see that in Muay Thai. You see that in Muay Thai. So I don't know if that was Wing Chun really. But if you want to look at proper practical kung fu, I think you look at Sanda, and then there's people like Chong Li, Kong Li, sorry, not Chong. Well, uh, Kung Li, yeah. Well, he came from Sanda, and he had like the scissor sweep that they can use in Sanda. That was really good for him in MMA, and it's kind of like a move that you don't see people use still to this day. So, because Sanda, as soon as you ground martial art, and as soon as you start doing actual sparring, actual combat, whatever works in a martial art is gonna come out. It's gonna glow, like so. Whatever worked in kung fu went to Sanda, and okay, of course, you have the boxing gloves and all that, sure, but still. And then the rest gets discarded. And then, interestingly enough, a lot of martial arts end up looking the same as soon as you add um, true contact, in the sport. As soon as you allow for true impact and true competition, then it's kind of like, interestingly enough, the combat sports, the different disciplines start looking more similar. Like Sanda looks, in a way, a lot more like Muay Thai and karate, kickboxing in Japan than it does Kung Fu. And yes, I know you can see differences. Okay, don't get me wrong, but anyway, okay. What am I saying? What I'm saying is that, and you see that in one championship. What I'm saying is that I think the future of MMA. I don't know if it goes with specialists or generalists, and we're gonna have people who do everything well from the start. But what I do think is that people will figure out how to personalize their styles more and more. I think you're gonna see like people just like become almost. It's almost gonna be like those old kung fu movies, when people went out seeking the secret technique, and maybe people will be looking for that edge. Like, okay, what can I add to my arsenal? Like, how about this weird move that everyone discarded, but I'm gonna use? Like that scissor sweep. You know. Like trapping hands, which I think we're starting to see more. Um, I think there's hey, look, Poirier, Dustin Poirier. I don't think a lot of people do that. I'm not that good at knowing boxing or at just throwing hands, but there's like a lot of people shell up. When they do boxing, they shell up or like this, or depending on the gloves, or they keep the hands front. Like I kind of, me personally, kind of keep a hand more up front. But um, what Poirier does is he does this thing where he brings his elbow like this. It's kind of like this. I don't know. I'm probably doing it wrong. I never tried to do it in sparring. I was never taught it. I'm just understanding and noticing that this is more of a boxing thing, and he's applying it to MMA. And when you think about it, it's kind of like a much better way to I think shell up for MMA, because like this with the small gloves, it's not you know um actually, wasn't it an uppercut that finished the Adrian Yanis and Randy Costa fight? I think it was an uppercut that went through. So, when you have small gloves, it kind of makes sense to. It's kind of funny because a lot of stuff that from the past that got discarded with MMA also got brought back. So with the big boxing gloves, people thought that like the stance, that old school stance like this, was in karate or in old school boxing. Like because of my camera crop right now, I have trouble showing it. But like a hand forward, and like a lot of people are like, "Well, that's not. No, you have to keep your hands here." But then what happened is with the small gloves. Oh, okay, there's a reason for it. So it's just I think the future of MMA will just be. I think people will have to be generalists, but I think they will also have their. This sounds like a cheesy old kung fu movie, like there's secret techniques or there's stuff that they went to learn, that, oh, you know what, I can put this in my back pocket for later if I need it. But it's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good because like the striking has evolved so much. When you look at old MMA fights now, uh the striking has evolved so very much. And then you see, and yeah, and it's almost like when you look at what Justin Gaethje did in his fight against Tony Ferguson, like there was a lot of boxing technique of where you were located, of like what's it called, bob and weave, like dipping under punch and like attacking as you're going down. So like all that stuff where in the past like MMA fighters are kind of like very squared up against each other, and just like they didn't really move their head as much. They didn't really set up stuff. And then you have Israel Adesanya, Gaethje under Trevor Whitman, like, um, and now we're starting to see some hand trapping as well. Like Usman did that to Masvidal. So it's just, I think over time, the future of MMA, I think dare I say, we're starting to see a new era where now we're looking at people who are really grabbing specific, like just secret techniques, if you will, from other disciplines. And then that begs the question: once that is all established, once all those techniques from other disciplines are established, what happens then? Because this is like evolution by taking from other stuff. But once it's all structured and set up, then we might have evolution from the very sport. Well, we already have it, but we might have it to another level. I don't even know if what I'm saying is clear. But I don't know what it'll look like. I think it's impossible to tell. The only question I think is, what is it going to be? An era ruled by specialists who start off in other places and go to MMA after, or is it just going to be generalists and the way of training is just going to get better? And like, we're already seeing it. In the past, it's crazy to think that people who did MMA would go train in the gi and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the gi, and then they would go train MMA. That's they would fight MMA. That's insane. And now you have people who show up, okay, they're MMA fighters, and they maybe have a blue belt because as far as pure Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu goes, they just all the grappling they learn is specific to MMA. So they don't, whatever they're learning is so specific to MMA that, yeah, in a pure role of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it might not do that well, even no gi. But in the context of MMA, like with strikes and where being on bottom is a very different story, like not necessarily a bad thing, but it's different, like, all those things. It's just, I don't know. I don't know. And when people talk about, sometimes people talk like, should there be belts for MMA, like colored belts? Like, hell no, because you can't. That would start like establishing what MMA should be, what a fighting style should be, and we don't want to do that. Um, so yeah, this is my long-winded and non-answer, I guess. Uh, let's see, and I had, if I go to my profile, I believe I had other questions. Okay, okay, from Red again. And what is your name? Okay, it's not John. What is your quest? What is my quest? You know what? If I can get to, if I can get to 100 subscribers on YouTube, that'd be pretty cool. I'm humble. I don't need much. Just 100. Uh, and what is the airspeed of an unladen swallow? What? Come on, man. What is that? You know what? No shame in admitting I have to Google this. What is that? Oh, is that from Monty Python? Oh yeah, it is from. Oh my God, it's from the Holy Grail movie. Okay, so it's a bird. The airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow. You know what? I have the answer here. I'm gonna. Here is your answer. There. There's the answer. I do not know if this is correct or not, but this is what we get. Okay. Okay. So for for those watching now and for those who will watch later after the live chat, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you feel like it. And you can follow me on social media. Look at the description down below. I have like all the links and all that stuff. So everyone, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.